No transcript. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mir Office Hours for October 3rd, 2025. I will make notes today, so who wants to run the agenda, of which there isn't much?
I can read out the agenda that you're sharing if that's all that's needed.
And then if you just can follow the meeting, yeah.
Yeah. So we had some actions from the previous meeting. Let's see what there were. So, not really any actions against any. No, it doesn't look like there's actually any actions defined in the last minutes. So we can move on from that. And it says Mir 218.2 update. So yes, we have a Mir 218.2 with lots of shiny new features and lovely bug fixes. And anyone can read the release notes if they want to know anything more detailed.
Yeah, and it is also part of Fedora 41 and newer. So Miracle, the new spin coming up, which we can talk about a little bit later, is going to use the very latest Mir.
Cool.
Okay, next item says Wayland protocols.
So I can go about this, kind of set the stage for that, because things have happened over the past couple of weeks that in the area that we've not been talking, and one of those was the Frog protocols repository popped up. To those that don't know about it, it's just a way to kind of unstale some Wayland protocols that are waiting for months or years in some cases in the Wayland protocols merge proposals, merge requests list. And I suppose there's been quite a bit of kind of talking about this in most people have noticed, I think, is what we can say. I've not been following on any changes. Neil, maybe you or anything that you want to add on this, what's happened, what it means, what it actually, is making happen?
Yeah, so I can speak about this. So Frog Protocols kind of started out of Missile, who works with Valve on a bunch of stuff related to making gaming performance good and maintains GameScope and a bunch of other things. GameScope had started having to fork draft versions of Wayland protocols to make things work because they were unfixably broken without them and they needed to make progress. It started getting to a point where, like, at first it was with color management, and then it started needing to be done for the FIFO stuff, which we had talked about. I think it was either in the previous office hours or the office hours before that about, taking a look at and reviewing commit timing and FIFO. But it had gotten to a point where after, I don't know, it's like 3 years of frustration, something needed to be done to make forward progress. And so Missile created the Frog protocols, moved the GameScope forks of upstream of proposed protocols into that, and started working with, for example, Quinn to get them implemented. So Frog color management is implemented by both Quinn and GameScope, and Frog FIFO is in the process of, it has a merge request open on Quinn to implement it. The idea around Frog protocols is to kind of take a much more lightweight and iterative approach to developing Wayland protocols and making it so that the end state is we have something that is stabilized, is backed by empirical evidence that it works well to be able to then submit to Wayland protocols proper and stabilize it. And to that end, it has a much more lightweight process. There's also things that are some of its requirements are oriented around the idea of things have to be made working and also provided in such a way that you have that you're willing to engage on a regular basis, as opposed to Wayland protocol's historical model is, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the way that it has kind of evolved into is the protocol has to be perfect before it can land. And that is unfortunately unrealistic. So Frog Protocols aims to alleviate this problem because there aren't really any other meaningful avenues for doing this kind of development in a way that can be collaborative and iterative. This has kicked off a whole bunch of stuff going on in Wayland Protocols where the people that run the Wayland Protocols project have kind of gotten, I guess, a little bit of a jolt, realizing that the project has, not to mince words, become dysfunctional, or at least perceived dysfunctional. The project has become somewhat infamous among certain spaces for some of its problems. And the fact that Frog Protocols got created to kind of deal with it has led to them taking a level of notice that the situation has gotten that bad. So there are a bunch of proposals going on right now with a bunch of different things about trying to improve Wayland Protocols as a project and as a process. Some things are good, some things are less good, some things can be construed as an improvement, even if I kind of disagree with them. I'm not going to go into details about all of that stuff. You can feel free to go look at it. But my personal opinion here is that I think it would make sense for us as Mir, as a project, and especially with Miracle and Miraway and all this other stuff that we're doing. And I know that you've started doing some protocol development of your own. I think it would make sense for us to engage with and support Frog Protocols, because they are going to wind up being protocols people need to use in the real world. So, for example, the Frog FIFO protocol, there's a draft merge request with a patch to make it be used by Mesa. It is already supported by GameScope. It will be supported by Quinn. There is also a draft patch submitted to SDL to make it turn on Wayland when this protocol is detected. And so it's a kind of a big win if that protocol is supported, that games and anything that uses SDL can just straight up go Wayland native. Because the reason that SDL doesn't default to it is because these things are missing, which makes applications that work in this environment to fail or have problems in certain circumstances that are otherwise not really fixable. Again, I'm not a complete expert on the details of all that stuff. I am barely a game developer myself. I kind of understand what's going on, but my opinion as someone who's doing community stuff and working on things like this and having to deal with all the bits and bobs and all the different stakeholders is, my recommendation is that we would engage with Frog Protocols and actually consider using it as an avenue for us to, as we discover our own problems, to iterate and develop and engage as a staging point between that and then Wayland Protocols proper. Because the people working on Frog Protocols, because it's not just Missile, it's a couple of other people, they are all cognizant that they don't want it to turn into Wayland Protocols. And that, from my point of view, I feel like that's a good thing to have. So like a lot of the success in protocol development requires coordination between clients and compositors. Applications and compositors. I don't want to use the client server terminology here because it confuses the crap out of people. But like that particular engagement between application developers, toolkit developers, and compositor developers isn't really happening in Wayland Protocols. The application developers are not part of the story, and that actually is, I think, one of the bigger weaknesses. Frog Protocols is intentionally open to application developer stakeholders. And so I think that that in itself makes it interesting and useful to me as someone who has been going around all these different groups of people, trying to help them get onto the Wayland path. So from that perspective, I think it's worth us actually looking into and supporting it. Like Frog color management and Frog FIFO, I think are useful protocols for us to consider implementing and supporting, because applications and toolkits are already looking into it. But like, it could also be useful for us when we find that we need stuff that is just missing, and we need to get them out there in a way that is a cross compositor fashion that we can get through more expeditiously. But again, my opinion, that's the summation of it. Feel free to disagree with me, but that's my summary of the events and my sort of little useful recommendation about how we should proceed with it.
No, I'm not going to contradict you. I see many of the same frustrations that you've alluded to. And I don't know whether this is the solution or just an impetus to the solution, but it certainly looks like something to track.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is it's created a reality check for the people that were running the Wayland Protocols project, that the path that it was on is not working. And so that in itself is great to me. We'll see how that works out over the coming year. But you know, I am cautiously, very, very cautiously optimistic.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I think the common kind of worry, I suppose, is even more fragmentation, right? As if Wayland didn't actually already show crazy amounts of fragmentation, right? But I think maybe, yeah, like as you say, we'll have to see how it plays out, because maybe this actually allows for less fragmentation if there's a place to get to a consensus that isn't as emotionally, I suppose, burdened as Wayland Protocols is.
Yeah, like the thing that was starting to happen all over the place, and I think this was something that the Wayland Protocols people didn't really observe, because they're disconnected in some weird sense from actual development of these environments, is that everybody was already choosing a fragmentous approach. So GNOME with Mutter, rather than trying to engage with Wayland Protocols to solve all these different things, kind of fell back to their dbus IPC oriented approach for everything, and started building private dbus interfaces to do stuff. And this eventually evolved into the portal system, which they created later. You look at what KDE is doing, and it's a dozen private protocols that it uses to engage with different components within the stack. And so it uses Wayland IPC with private protocols to do this stuff, and because they need to get stuff done. And then you look at WL Roots as the third ecosystem, really, and it's very well known. They have WLR protocols. There is a pile of stuff in there that some people have literally never submitted to Wayland Protocols, but those are all things that, because they don't either have the energy or the time or any of this other stuff, but like those protocols, some of them are so widely adopted that everyone uses them. Like, for one example is WLR data control. That's the clipboard manager protocol. Every compositor except for Mutter implements it, and Weston, but every other one does. So it's effectively universal, but no one has ever submitted it to Wayland Protocols. Well, except for me. I just wound up deciding to submit it like a week ago. And so now I'm going through trying to make ext data control a thing, which means I'm probably going to try to pick a couple of compositors to do implementations for, and I might need help. So there's your heads up that I might need help on doing some Wayland Protocol work in Mir.
That should be easy.
Yeah, no, I hope it'll be easy. It's just so the situation right now is that this has already been happening, and it's just something that's been happening behind the covers. Frog Protocols being a public project that is engaged in such a way to be cross-compositor while explicitly not being Wayland Protocols makes it a thing that was already happening under the covers to be above the covers. And I think that freaked a bunch of people out. But this is no different than what was already happening. Honestly, I think the good part about this is that it formalizes this extra entry point in a way that other people can also work with. Because what I don't want to have to deal with, which is starting to happen, is, okay, Mir's making this Mir shell thing, which is a bunch of other extra stuff in it. And then there's the Pantheon people making their own thing related to how they want to have docs loaded in their own Wayland protocol, that they plugged in a custom hacky extension on top of Mutter to make it work. And then you have layer shell that's used by the WL roots people, but then KDE's like, this is not enough. We might actually need to change this and make a custom protocol for this. And like, it kind of goes on and on and on with all these different things. And I just don't think it is, I don't think it's great that this is all happening fractiously rather than in some place that people can come together. Like LabWC started implementing Cosmic protocols. Cosmic has its own protocols now as a desktop, because they forked a bunch of draft protocols and stabilized it for their use. So, like, it's either going to happen in a place everybody knows about, or it's going to happen in all the places no one knows about. I would rather take the place where everyone knows about it and can work together. So,
yeah, I just think the kind of extension of my worry about fragmentation is that without major changes in Wayland protocols, in terms of process and in terms of just direction, I suppose, this is like, it's not going to change anything for the better in that area, right? It's just going to formalize the situation we are in, right, to some extent, and just accept it. But
okay,
yeah,
I think you're leading nicely into our next point, which is process improvements for Wayland protocols.
I don't think I have anything anything to add. Neil mentioned that already, like that this is a kind of part of the response to frog protocols, right? And there's probably been more that I missed, but ultimately it's that, right? I think there needs to be a way out from the situation we're in.
Cool.
I think it would make sense for you guys to, either you, Mikhail, or Alan, or Matt, to actually go and review or Chris, to go review the proposals on the Wayland Protocols project and the merge requests, because none of the improvements can land without, like everything else, you need the acts and the approvals and the reviews and all that stuff. So go take a look at them when you've got a few moments, and leave feedback, because I suspect a lot of the feedback that I gave in there is probably similar to what you have, but because I'm not a member, I'm an outsider, and like, formally speaking, no one cares what I think. It makes a lot more sense if a Wayland Protocols member like Mir kind of steps in and says a bunch of things that make it more meaningful. So, yeah. So my suggestion: go take a look at it, give some feedback, let them know what you think, and kind of go from there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other business?
Well, so I guess this would be the right time to talk about the Miracle stuff, the status update on Miracle. So, Fedora Miracle has reached beta status a couple weeks ago. And we are going to be going into final freeze in 2 weeks on the 15th. So at this point, we've actually gotten the desktop mostly working. There's some minor issues here and there. Let me see if I can actually pull it up here. Or yeah, let's see here. Miracle, and do I have it installed on here? So trying to boot up. Sec. Shut down. I need to download a new ISO because apparently I didn't download one, and the one I have is like a month old. So Miracle went live. There we go. While it is downloading, so to kind of recap for people, the Fedora Miracle Spin uses Matt Kosarek's Miracle window manager that is built on Mir, and it is a tiling-ish window manager. And the idea for this is to be like a very fancy Sway. Like if you've seen how Sway looks and you notice that it's bare bones and not very friendly looking and whatever, the idea is to kind of make it not that. Make it more friendly, make it more appealing, and provide like an approachable experience. To that, we kind of integrated some other third-party components from the NWG Shell project, and they have a bunch of little things here, and we've started extending and integrating those things to provide a desktop shell environment. And we've gotten most of the stuff to work now. The main things that are not working at this point is that there's something wrong with the way that Layer Shell interacts with the windows. And there's also, and I still haven't figured out why the portal doesn't work.
Which portal is that?
The WLR portal.
And what are you trying to interact with? Screen sharing, something?
Yes, I'm trying to do a screenshot or a screen share, and it doesn't work.
Oh, okay. I can help you out with that whenever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the third issue is, which I think this is mostly Matthew forgot to do it, is I can't change the resolution of the screen because the output management interface is not working.
You should. So the way to do that, or we should probably bake this into it, but the way to do that is when we run Miracle, we can set a static display config, and then you could change the stuff there.
Well, the config it picks out of the gate by default is fine. The problem is if someone wants to resize it or change the monitor setup or whatever,
Right.
None of that is working because the output management protocol is not exposed. And so Kanshi and WLR render don't work.
Well, in Mir, you technically don't need that protocol to change it while it's in flight. So
Right.
we'll have another. I am also working on that protocol, but in the meantime, I will set a static file for that, and then you could change that as the compositor is running, and it'll refresh. You could change your profile, and it'll refresh automatically.
But we do need a way for these tools that we are apparently preloading on here to actually do something.
I agree with that, and my solution there is also going to involve the output config anyway, because long story short, the protocol is going to write to that config that's automatically reloaded, and boom,
no, that's totally fine. That also solves the other problem of how do you make it persistent, right? Because
we have it persist. Yeah, so
because for WL roots-based compositors, they have to use a separate third-party service that what it does is it boots up and reconfigures the compositor.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what we can do is we don't need Kanshi. We can just use WL render and it will save it and it will persist until you change it again, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. And in the meantime, I'll do that today, actually. I'll include the static file and boom, you change the static file, do whatever you want.
Sure. But yeah, like are we done downloading? Yes, we are done downloading. Woo! All right,
So just a question. So you were mentioning WL render. That sounds like a CLI tool that may actually be less pleasant to use than just the file editor on the static file that we have, because it actually has context and it actually has a human readable format. So if you're just implementing WLR output manager for modifying that static file, I think maybe just saying to the users, like, this is the file to modify, might be a good enough solution?
So the thing is, I think things like the shell configurator and whatever, they also use output management to expose things like per workspace displays and things like that, and per display workspaces, sorry, the other way around, and things like that. And so there are also graphical tools and things that can be used. Anyway, I just got it working and booted up, so I'm going to go ahead and present. Let's see, go operating system share window.
I should mention the first bug Neil mentioned was the fact that full screen windows still appear behind shell components.
Yeah, so here is the thingy. That doesn't work because there's something broken, which I need to find out what it is. This is also weirdly broken, which is apparently we're reading the wrong text from the desktop file. I don't know whose problem that actually is, but that'll be worth dealing with at some point. But yeah, so here's the installer. Notice, Matthew, I was telling you earlier how it launches in not full screen, and thus I can't click anything. What is the combination?
The newest patch that you
for full screen again? It's
Meta F.
Okay, so
or
super
whatever.
Nope.
F.
Oh, F, right. There we go. Finally. So now it's full screen, and you can see that the shell elements are covering things up. So I'm going to select English, US. Yeah, I do the clicky thing. And then the reason this is a problem is I can't click the done button.
What if you super F and then super shift space?
Super shift space.
And then
nope.
Okay, super shift space and then meta. Basically, I'm trying to get. It's out of. If you do meta drag.
Anyway, not the point. Yeah. Point is that this is here, and then I open up Firefox or whatever, and yeah, it looks a little goofy.
This will be fixed by the latest thing that I just put in.
Okay, but yeah, so we got this. We have more of this. Yeah, so this is the thing in a nutshell. We have a shell thing. We have time, date, widgets. I actually don't know if these workspaces work. We should probably try that out at some point. But this is essentially the desktop. As part of implementing this, we even have rudimentary support. Oh yeah, that doesn't actually work. But as part of doing this, we have rudimentary support for running as a system to user session. So that's all in place. So that is like a very quick demo of it. And that's actually based on the nightly snapshot built on September 30th. So that is pretty much up to date, running on Mir 218, doing the thing. There's a bunch of little bugs here and there, but the experience is mostly usable. I actually don't know what the pink border is about, though, because that is weird. But there you go. That is a very quick demo of the Miracle Spin, and the goal is to have this in a state where people can try it out and have fun with it. When Fedora 41 releases, I mean, the current plan, I think, is that it will release on the 22nd of October if everything goes well. I don't know if everything will go well, but if it does, then that means we will have the Miracle Spin GA'd by the time for Ubuntu Summit, which means Matthew has no excuse to not run it as a daily driver on his computer.
You're not wrong. I have a question. After it gets, after October 15th, are we allowed to update the version of Miracle that's running underneath it all, or?
It's just a freeze exception. We have to make freeze exceptions for all that. If you're familiar with stable release updates process for Ubuntu, that's similar for Fedora. We just do when we're in freeze. We have a freeze exception. We have a freeze update process that has to go through, and it's very similar to the stable release updates thing. We file a bug, we make a request, we connect it to an update, and we have to justify ourselves for why it needs to be shipped. And then if it's okay, it'll get shipped. If it's not, then they'll block it until after GA. The thing is that because we're a non-blocking spin, the threshold for getting things updated during the freeze is very low, because we're not, as long as we're not breaking anything for anyone else, it is fine.
Okay. So if it's January of next year, we could update this thing as much as we want.
Yeah. The main thing the thing that we have to be careful about is doing updates of Mir itself. And the reason is because Mir updates, bumping to a new feature version, if the ABI changes, for some of the libraries, I can't actually update Mir in a stable release. So like we're on 2.18 now. If 2.19 has an ABI break, then in some of the libraries and not all of them, then which is how it mostly works out these days, I can't update it because there is no way for me to deal with the conflicts of having making a compatibility package for an older version of Mir and having the newer version of Mir and having everything linked correctly and not breaking. So so that's the only real caveat, is that part of once we go GA, I can't update Mir anymore. In the past, I could kind of wiggle this through because there was nothing depending on it. That's not true anymore. We now have Miracle, so that rule, I can no longer sky by that rule. So there you
should have made it a snap.
Yeah. So this is the side effect of you becoming useful and popular, Matt.
Thanks. So wait, so we are ostensibly stuck on Mir 2.18
for 41.
For 41. Okay, and then 42 could be 2.19, 2.20.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know though, because then as things break, I'll have to maintain it a little separately, but it's all good.
Well, most likely what you'll want to do is unless it's completely unavoidable, you're probably going to want to start maintaining forward and backward compatibility inside the code base.
Yeah, just with if-def, but hopefully not too much if-def hell. I think
there won't be
that
much.
defined for
like
us,
even the most recent API breaks haven't been that bad.
No, they're always small things. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So
typically they're ABI rather than API breaks, which is fine for the code.
The kicker for me is I use a bunch of internal APIs.
Right. This is why this is a problem, because he decided he wanted to use Mir internal APIs.
Yep.
Thankfully, Miraway doesn't have this problem.
Yeah. Which leads to the next announcement. There is now an actually tagged release of Miraway, which is snapped up using Mir 2.18.2. It's working nicely for me, and I hope for anyone else that tries it.
Yeah, I am planning to package up and ship Miraway. As soon as I have this, so I started working on yesterday. I didn't get much time to work on it because store infrastructure went down due to complications related to infrastructure upgrades. But my hope is to actually get Miraway into Fedora as soon as I have a configuration that works for Fedora LexQt, and then have it available as an option, and then also produce a couple of things. Is the schedule for the Ubuntu Summit is public now, right? Or yeah, okay.
Yes.
So I can talk about this. So Alan and I are giving a talk about Miraway at Ubuntu Summit. So this means that one of the things I'm trying to do for that is I'm trying to make a demo of Fedora LexQt with Miraway in place that we can use for the talk. So we're just gonna do the presentation from Miraway. but I have to first get it working, which I am spending time today on because I didn't get time to do it yesterday. So hopefully I will have something neat to share with you guys later, but also definitely I am planning to have something neat to share with the whole world at Ubuntu Summit.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool,
Any
cool.
more other business? Then I guess that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you all. See you next time.